So happy to be with media people here. Media has a significant role in the society, very important role. For the newsmakers, perception creators, opinion builders, eyes and ears of the public. You can say sometimes you are the mouthpiece of the innocent lot who wants to talk but do that because it's a noble profession indeed. It comes with a huge responsibility. Responsible reporting calls for fair and accurate. The measure of goodness of a report generally has two important ingredients. One is authenticity and completeness. To have a fair and complete, what's required is for the professional to know the various dimensions of issues on hand because there are several stakeholders, participants in a particular issue, and when viewed from each one, most of the times, very often, the points of view of participants are odds. So it is very essential to have views of all people involved before venturing on reporting. That's it. So I'm now happy to show so the different aspects the power sector has got in terms of different dimensions. Before getting on, to just to mention about what Mr. Tashinai was mentioning that power sector is undergoing structural changes in many fronts. The important one being decarbonization. This can be attributed to the need to mitigate the climate change, global warming, all costs, both of the greenhouse gas emission. It simply mean that replace all fossil fuel based power generation with clean renewable energy based resources. That's it. When we talk about renewable energy taking over, we have three questions propping up our mind: the availability, affordability, reliability. When we take up the issue of abundance, of availability, we need to know what is the consumption of power. The country as a whole today has about 1.2 trillion units consumption per annum, roughly. If you think that 1.2 trillions with 10% CAGR growth rate, what is it's quite optimistic, but still taking 10% CAGR for next 2 decades. Our power requirement at the end of say some 20 years from now would be anything close to or just less than 10 trillion units. Do we have the space enough to cater or the renewable energy abundance to cater the 10 trillion units? The rough calculation shows that if the solar is going to take over the entire energy requirements of the country, it may require close to 25,000 square kilometer of area, roughly 160 by 160 kilometer plot area. This is based on the technology available as on date, where the technology is going, extensive works are going on, the research and development on this one, where the efficiency of the panel are getting multiplied several times. To that extent, the space requirement also will come down. So there cannot be any question about the abundance. Just solar itself can take over. The kind of thing. There are other resources being there. Other resources are there. When it comes to the question of cost, the price of renewables have been hovering very high sometime, but with the kind of developments happening and the kind of interest shown and the economic volumes are increasing, the prices have gradually come down. And today, it is said that the solar power, and for that matter, wind also has reached the grid parity. People tell it is the bare cost of the power. There may be some more additional thing, but the cost of power bare for solar energy is comparable with that of any other power that is being sourced. The next and last one is the reliability. What is reliability? The power must be available at any point of time on demand. Unfortunately, solar sun shines only few hours in a day, seasonal. Even though we have enough potential to generate all the requirement of the country by the source, but it's not available at any point in time. Actually, it is available far in excess during some short periods of the day, and paltry or nil during the rest of the time. How to address that issue? So we need to go for some apparatuses, energy storage system, like batteries, to have the excess energy stored at the time of excess generation to be fed at the lean times of generation. So a lot of works are going on the storage system also. There is not single storage. This one, there are multiple opportunities available. Avenues are there. The cost is also coming down, and in fact, there is a cost and space added to this also. This has to be added along with that. So there we call the levelized cost of energy kind of thing. And in fact, the levelized cost of operation shall include all the additional extra costs also. One of them is the storage. So, with the whole world focusing on this one, it is imminent that maybe for some reasons it may be delayed for due to some reasons, but eventually the takeover by renewables is imminent. That's the point I wanted to make before getting into the theme of the discussion which we had. Coming back to our original theme, let's see what are the different dimensions of who are the participants or stakeholders in a power sector. At one end is our generators. Generators are the source. Who are the investors who invest their money to have the power produced for consumption? What they expect? They expect a steady stream of revenue to cover their cost with reasonable return on or a margin. Very fair. One thing is to noteworthy that the cost of generation for all the generators are not same. It depends on the source which goes into generation. Even if you take a source, it again depends on the location, the technology used, the year of installation, several things. There are several factors which affect the cost of generation. There is no single rate which is applicable to all across. Cost of generation varies. This is general. The other end of the spectrum will be the consumers. Again, consumers are segregated into different categories. No two categories pay the same tariff for the same power which is used. In fact, bulk of the consumers who consume but less pay far less than the cost of electricity what they use, which have to be compensated by the small people who consume little bulky. They compensate. They call cross subsidization. Being big in numbers, they will resist any movement to raise any kind of which we have been talking about the tariff and all. So that's the power of consumers. There is one more element called system operator who ensures the power availability throughout that. They are the link between the generator and the consumer. They are the people who ensures grid security with one frequency, one nation kind of thing that India has become one of the biggest network in terms of electricity. And with two incidences back of mind, which happened, I think, July 30th and 31st of 2012, where more than 30 million people were pushed into darkness for hours continuously. So what has happened is the fearing for the security they started tightening the norms, the codes of operation. There is no leniency in respect of any of the participants, especially the utilities, who to operate at their will. They will have to follow certain norms. Any violation would cause heavy penalty. Then we will introduce one important record, not one, in fact two, the government departments, central and state. They are the lawmakers, policymakers, rule makers. Central government with a broad vision in mind and having the economic growth of the country as the focal point would be seen looking more through the eyes of generators and industries. In order to ensure the economic growth happens and kind of comfort given to the investors, they would come out with slice of what do you say, some schemes. For example, a section of generators may be offered some incentives, some benefits, some waivers, some subsidies, kind of thing. They will also see to that the generators are getting paid for whatever electricity they get. For this purpose, they will ask the utilities to have their next year's power tied up for the previous year itself and ensure 24 by 7 power availability to the citizens. and with a rider that any failure to pay the power dues to the generators, the power will be cut. They would like the distribution utility to be financially healthy so that they don't default in the payment dues. For this, they would like the distribution utility to operate purely on commercial basis, to shed any trace of being a community service oriented entity. They don't like any cross subsidization or subsidy kind of thing. They would like all consumers pay the cost of power they use ultimately. If at all, if the state government wants some cross section of the society is to be extended some benefit, it can be by way of direct transfer of benefits to the beneficiary, not through the utility. The utility has to be on the toes to keep the consumers intact and get new consumers by way of opening the arena to the marketplace. Open access must be freely allowed. Any consumer can choose the supplier of his choice. These are some of the basic viewpoints when looked from the central. Coming to state, they are more closer to the public. They don't want to turn the apple cart. They don't want to earn apathy from masses. So, they are not keen in taking away any of the benefits that has been already extended to any section of the society. In fact, they will be interested to extend anything in the available next opportunity. That's the kind of thing. In their standpoint, economic growth of the country is, after all, if it is to be inclusive, it should trickle down up to the lowest level so that the masses really enjoy the benefit of growth. For which, if some benefit has to be extended to them, that naturally has to be happen. So there is no real reason to say no to that. And they also liken this when some section of participants are offered some incentives, some benefits, some waivers, which is akin to the cross subsidy. Why should we talk about removing cross subsidy? Anyway, the cost of those benefits are again shared by that they called socialization of the cost. Socialization of cost is nothing but the ultimate beneficiary bears the cost. Any incentive given to an operator and participant is borne by someone else. Cross subsidy also same. What is the point in doing away the cross subsidy? That's the viewpoint of the state government. Then we take an important player, the distribution utility. There are two or three more. For example, the transmission utility is there, energy exchange, and ancillary markets in the offing. So let's not too much make ourselves into that. We'll go to the distribution utility, which is the nodal point. which has got a direct relationship to all the participants. No other participants have got direct relations, but this is the one which directly the generator supplies power to the utility for which it expects money from the utility. The consumer wants the power to be supplied reliably from the utility. The government has to implement any of the policies only through the nodal agency. So the role of distributional utility is vital. One thing is none of the participant is happy with them. None. In fact, the distributional utility itself is not happy. Because not being able to satisfy any of the participants, they themselves are very unhappy. They are in a state of confusion. They do not know for sure whether they are still a service oriented entity or a commercial entity. On the one hand, the cross subsidies are to be removed. It is told to absorb the cost of socialization to be dispersed among masses. It's not clearly seen, except the nomenclature and the beneficiary. It doesn't see any difference between the two. When one side, when this is sought to be removed, the other one it is being imposed, I still perform the function as a community interest based society. Still, that has not gone. Who am I? When it comes to, and it has been asked to perfectly come on the lines of commercial principles. It has to keep the prices of the power at a level which is comparable to what others are supplying so that they can be in the race. And they feel there is no freedom for them to say no to a power which in their view is costlier when it is being asked to source from certain section of generators. In order to contain the expenditure outgo, when they want to see with some of the PPAs which were entered at a time and situation which are not very relevant today, they are asked not to touch the PPA which is sacrosanct. It gets perplexed when some set of generators going and representing some of the classes which entered into the PPA are totally unworkable for some reasons and it has to be reinforced. That is getting accommodated. There are several woes, several. I'll recall and tell you more also. So what happens is ultimately it only increases the average cost of power supply it is procuring, which has to be translated in terms of tariff. In an open market, when the tariff of power is higher than anything else, where is the question of retaining the consumers? The consumers got the right to and have their own choice of They cannot prevent migration of consumers from their own domain, leave alone new consumers coming in. What happens is, with more and more consumers going away along with the power they consume, the denominator which used to be sizable getting dwindled, the numerator which is the additional cost incurred remaining the same, the quotient becomes higher, meaning that the tariff has to, without any touch, it has to go up. It's a kind of vicious circle, endless. Theoretically, it may be construed that there may be a time when almost all people deserting the utility, leaving alone only some marginal and low end consumers who, for reasons, cannot go away at all. They are asking them inefficient, indifferent, unresponsive. Their words are not heard. Going further, even if a person is not a consumer of the utility and arranges his requirement of power from some other source which may be within the state or outside the state, and he is unable to source that temporarily or frequently for some reasons, under the universal obligation, the utility has to extend the power supply to him at such a times, because of the reason the person is connected to the grid in the area of the licensing. So these are all generally the viewpoints of the utility. I am not arriving at any conclusion or anything. I leave it open to the media. To it's only a kind of from the point of view of each of the participants, who will now explore and get to know what actually happened to the sector. One thing is that if for some reasons the utility falls, which is the fulcrum, it will sink with all the participants. Somebody may get escape with some bruises, somebody will sink along. And resurrection will be painful and take long. This is the only conclusion, the inference I wanted to make. I do not want to make any kind of my own points of view on thrust on any of the thing. I leave it to the media persons to really analyze and come out with a fair and accurate report. Thank you.